goddamn garage. Oh yeah, baby, my goddamn garage. We're talking COVID now, my goddamn garage. And Convoys, my goddamn garage. Justin Trudeau, my...
God damn it. I didn't want to talk about COVID or politics or any of this crap. But after the last couple of years with the pandemic, the restrictions, passports, the mandates, all the controversies, I thought, I have to record what I think about this. If for no other reason than because I know I won't think the same thing about it in a year or two. So why not record what I think now and make it public so I could potentially humiliate future me? Seems like a good deal. So let's see how I do. First, for me, there's like a sliding scale, where the mortality rate, the transmissibility, and the safety and efficacy of the vaccine, as all of those things increase, the desire for mandates or passports will also increase, and likewise if they go down. If the virus only killed 1 in 10 million and the vaccine was only 50% effective, nobody would be asking for mandates. But if it killed 1 in 5 and the vaccine was 100% effective, more people would be asking for them. So there's a scale, and everyone's not going to just magically agree at the exact same moment, right? We generally don't ask for passports for flu. I've never seen that before, but some jobs did require it. So it was on the cusp. This is a little bit worse, and what are we going to think about it? Well, that's something we have to decide publicly. And we don't have a metric. We don't have a standard. We don't even know how to really judge this thing. So this noise of us freaking out about this and these protests, this is the sound that culture makes when they're collectively trying to figure these things out in the modern age with all the internet communication we have available. Because 0 deaths is not necessarily the goal or even necessarily achievable. And we do allow some risk in society, whether that's cars, planes, back mountain hiking, other viruses. So, and that's one of the things that makes this tricky, right? Did anyone really think that passports, vaccine mandates would all be okay at the same moment to every single one of us? There has been no collective agreement on where that line would be. And I don't even know what the metric is for something like that. So obviously there's going to be a heated debate, and people should be, we should expect them to be protesting, of course. And generally speaking, those most ostracized by the earlier decisions, like who was considered essential or not essential, will be the ones protesting the loudest. Not in all cases, though, because personality differences will matter as well. So this is a difficult situation. There's a decent number of people that don't agree, and we should do the best we can to extend a hand to them while accepting that you're not going to change them. They are who they are. Personally, I don't think we're at that point on the sliding scale where I would agree with passports and some of the mandates, maybe most of them. I'm not sure. Presumably, there's a spot along there where I would agree with them. And I don't know where that is. I'd probably have to be in that situation to even know. These are complicated issues. And I don't begrudge others where they sit on those scales either. It's perfectly fine. We live in a large country. There's a lot of different backgrounds who come here, plus who is already here. And then on top of that, there's the location differences. So there's an awful large variety of cultures across the country. There's no way we're all going to agree. So we work it out democratically the best we can. And for the most part, I'll abide by whatever the democracy says. And it's important to remember we weren't all living with COVID in the same way, right? Some people were hardly impacted at all, like me. Some were practically ruined, and I know a few of those. Some were actually helped a little bit, and some were helped a lot more than others, like the Jeff Bezoses of the world. And while all of this was happening, the restrictions didn't really apply to everybody in quite the same way, or at least not the policing of it. Rich people with private jets could move in and out of the country quite easily in comparison to a regular citizen. And the rich always seem to find a way to get better treatment. I'm sure even if they get sick, they have a better chance of making it than a poor person does. So when the convoy came along, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, several friends of mine were on board with this convoy and agreed with its general aims. Some people went there, some gave money. Others thought these people were a bunch of uneducated hicks banging on about nothing and being totally ridiculous for not getting the vaccine. I really don't like protests or huge crowds in general. But if I had to pick, I was slightly more in favor of the general aims of the rally. Not because I don't think the vaccine is necessary. I got it, and I recommend it to other people. But I just can't agree with the mandates that don't even seem to agree with each other. And don't even seem to follow the science. Mandates that change from province to province and passports that didn't always make complete sense to me. For example, I could walk into a food court and that food court would just be wall-to-wall people with their masks not on properly, some down under their nose, lined up, no social distancing, no checking of a passport, nothing going on. Grab my New York fries and sit down, surrounded by other people, no walls up anywhere. Or I could go across the street to a restaurant where I have to show a passport. And when I show my passport, I get walked by dozens of totally empty tables and then put in a booth with plexiglass walls between me and the next table. It didn't make any sense. Some of these rules were just ridiculous. And even worse than that was the case of when they drew the original line between essential workers and non-essential workers. And the people that were essential weren't always essential, in my experience. Some of them were working at jobs where they weren't doing something we needed. And then other people were doing things like teaching music at a private school, and they just lose their jobs. And none of it really made sense to me. And why would it? How is it that they're going to respond to this crazy pandemic and they're going to do everything perfectly? Clearly, it won't all be perfect. But people got hurt, and trust is constantly being eroded. People were being more and more alienated from a government they already didn't trust. And now that same government was asking them to take a pharmaceutical that didn't always seem to follow the rules of other publicly available drugs. The ads on the radio would simply say, safe and effective. But how safe does something have to be, and how effective does it have to be for those words to be allowed? Other drugs would have these big list of side effects at the end. And it seems to me there's like a pretty strict legal standard things have to pass in order to use certain terminology. The side effects may include diarrhea and indigestion, heartburn, headaches, those types of things. But with this, we're just simply told safe and effective. That's it. And then not only that, but these are ads paid for with our tax dollars, sometimes on our public broadcaster, which is also paid for with our tax dollars. So if you already don't trust the government, this is all going to look pretty suspicious. And look, remember, I took the vaccine. I plan on taking more. That's not the point. I don't know how everyone else's head works, though. And I can't even be sure that mine is right. There has to be room for some doubt. Now here comes the convoy, and however many truckers and thousands of others, not all from Canada, who are furious about, COVID, the World Economic Forum, wokeness, vaccines, passports, mandates, a whole host of issues. But it's mostly about mandates and passports, make no mistake. Now, I know there was a swastika, the General Lee flag, whatever it's called, and various other things as well. In the fringes, but I know what the lefty line is, right? If there's 10 people in a room and one of them is a Nazi, you got yourself 10 Nazis. And I don't fully agree with that kind of reasoning. If I show up at a Justin Trudeau rally waving a Nazi flag, that doesn't mean that Justin Trudeau's a Nazi all of a sudden. Just the appearance of a thing at something celebrating him doesn't mean he's automatically associated with it. I saw a sickle and hammer flying at a healthcare worker support rally. That doesn't mean, just because I support healthcare workers, doesn't mean that I'm suddenly a communist or pro-Soviet now. It's something one Yahoo did. So everybody's got to figure out how they feel about that and what they're going to do about it. Whether or not you want to still discuss the issue at hand, or whether or not you want to talk about these fringes or whatever it is that they were. As far as I'm concerned, if you just want to say that there was thousands of literal Nazis who tried to overthrow the government, in my opinion, that's just a way to shut down the conversation entirely. Because everybody I know denounces that. People I know who were there were disgusted by this notion of white supremacy and all this kind of nonsense. They literally just wanted to talk about those issues. And if we all just denounce it, why can't we all just move on and actually talk about it? There is that one famous photo with the big swastika, and that one's cropped weirdly. From what I heard, they were chased off right away. And then there's other times you'll see a swastika sharpied onto a Canadian flag. From what I understand, that's supposed to mean the Canadian government's turning into a Nazi government. It's becoming fascist, it's a ridiculous way to make that point. It's as ridiculous as defund the police, as is obviously not meaning defund the police. And this often happens with crowds where they have stupid slogans being shown. And there's probably also some jackasses there too. I don't know what to say about that. They exist. So, looking at all of these things, these hate symbols that were there and whatnot, it seems like it's pretty obvious what Trudeau should have said. At least to me, it seems that way. It seems obvious how he should have treated this from the beginning, but yet he didn't. He tended to, as far as I could tell, use the absolute worst tactic every step of the way. When even an idiot like me, who knows nothing about politics, could have thought of something better to say. I would have figured, based on the speeches I've seen in the past, he'd say something like, first, I would like to say that the swastika, Confederate flag, and other hate symbols that I saw at that protest were absolutely disgusting, and I hope those people were removed as quickly as possible. And I like to think that the vast majority of Canadians, even at that protest, agree with me on at least this point. Secondly, Most of the mandates and passports people are upset about are actually provincial and not federal. But either way, I understand gathering in numbers will help your cause. And I'm here to say that in all cases, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's working as hard as we can to do this as safely and effectively as possible. We are trying to balance the concerns of an entire public, and we are doing this in a democratic way. We believe we have the majority on our side, but we hear your plea, and I, personally, hear your anger. We will work as hard as we can to be more transparent about our future plans. Thank you. But that's not what he did. He didn't do anything like that at all. What did he do instead?
Conservative Party members can stand with people who wave swastikas. They can stand with people who wave the Confederate flag. Small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views. Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials.
La vaccination.
Qui sont extrémistes.
Qui croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi.
Look, I tried calling them Nazis and bigots. I tried yelling at them about swastikas and Confederate flags. Nothing worked. All my nuanced tactics and my keen diplomacy skills failed. So I had to call in the Emergencies Act, right?
In the kind of society that you live in.
There's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed, but it's more important to keep law and order in this society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks of a soldier.
At any cost? At any cost? How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that?
Well, just watch me.
Now, Justin Trudeau originally got in mostly based on the goodwill generated by his father. He had a pot scandal early on, and I sort of predicted back then he was going to be our prime minister, where he sort of got a lot of attention. You thought it would be a scandal, but it wasn't. He kind of got praised instead as a good, modern leader. But by the time the next election came along, Trudeau hadn't done all that well. His popularity was dipping, and so he started to use fear to get in. And he generated a lot of fear of conservatives. Oh, they're going to get rid of gay rights, and they're going to make abortion illegal, and all these kinds of things. And it worked well enough, you know, he got in. And now recently, in the middle of the pandemic, when we had to go back again, he managed to drum up even more fear. You know, the people that hated him helped because they would show up at the protests screaming and yelling, you know, at Trudeau, and he couldn't get a word out. And if you were on the line, well, watching that would make you feel sorry for the guy. I even felt bad for him after a while. I was like, God damn, why do these people have to keep yelling at him all the time? Just let the guy speak. Let him do his own thing. But that's not what happened. And now here we are here. And Trudeau has seen fear tactics work really well. So it seemed to me in the beginning, oh, he's just focusing on this fear thing all the time. Every question he's at, hey, what do you want for dinner, honey? I do not stand with swastikas. You know, he's so obsessed with just that one answer all the time that it seemed like he was just going to rely on it and hope to drum up more votes that way. You know, I'm so cynical. I keep thinking that politicians are always looking for votes first, you know, party first, country second. That's how it feels to me. So it was difficult to trust this guy, right? And it seemed to me that he was just drumming up more fear again to help himself. But once the Emergencies Act came into play, that's when it got confusing and I wasn't so sure anymore. Is that somebody who's just frantic and panicking, or is that an even more bold and calculated move? Neither one of those are good options, really, but that's about all I can come up with. I suppose it could be justified, is the argument a lot of people are making as well. I don't know how that makes sense. I've seen how they behaved at other protests, Ferry Creek, the Wet'suwet'en, the transatlantic pipeline. I've seen other crises in my lifetime, like the Oka crisis. I never did anything like this happen. I mean, not since 1970, they say, and I know this is different than the other acts. It's new and never been used before. So I'm not sure. The reason I don't know is no one has made it clear to me exactly when the Emergencies Act can come into play. Exactly what point in this protest did they cross that line where now the government's allowed to call this in. I don't know how that's measured or where that line is, why those other protests didn't do it, and what extra powers they need to solve this. None of this is really being made clear. There should be a lot of suspicion about this, and there's much less than I would have hoped for. The day that this happened and the Emergencies Act came into play and the police took Ottawa back, I was pretty much glued to Twitter that day, watching all kinds of live streams and that kind of nonsense. And it's amazing too, right? Because you can see, you see the horses come out and you see some people get knocked over, trampled, they say. Some people did get hurt, there's no doubt. And you can't help but notice that the person taking the video, they have this tone in their voice. To me, it sometimes sounds like they want the person to get hurt. They want their fellow protester to get hurt so that they have it on film and so that they have a martyr for the cause. I know that's a dark thing to say. I like to think that even the people filming it in a moment of calm reflection later on could realize that that is happening to them.
The federal government will be ending the use of the Emergencies Act.
Thank you. Thank you. That's because of me. Obviously, he knew I was making this episode. He knew I was right the same day I was making it, and he should release that message right now to stop me. Well, it's not going to work. I'm putting it out anyways. I don't know what happened. I don't know exactly what laws he needed to have access to. I don't know what the difference was during those brief number of days when we had it in place. I have no clue. I don't know what him and the Liberal Brain Trust are thinking, if whether or not this move was going to be a good move for him politically or not, whether or not he thought maybe it wouldn't pass Senate and an election would be forced and he was worried about that, whether he panicked to put it in place and panicked to take it out, or it's not really clear. But accounts were frozen, then accounts were not frozen. What is the Liberal Brain Trust up to? I suspect that it's not purely about the safety of the country. And I suspect that, once again, it's party first, like it always is with this party system. One of the issues I kept hearing about this being necessary was this freezing of accounts, because foreign money was involved. And, let's say that's fair. I don't know. But I'd never heard of it before, about the protests I mentioned, about the BLM protests or the Wall Street ones or the anti-Trump ones we had even here in Canada. Or what about us giving money to other causes outside of our country? If I give money to a cause that's involved in protests in America or England or some other place, is that the same issue now? And of course, if a country like America hears about something going on here and there's sympathetic people there that want to help, well, they have 10 times our population. So the money could come funneling in and look like a large amount pretty damn quickly. And this is the inevitable byproduct of living in a global village with mass digital communications. Of course, people can bond together in tribes that don't have anything to do with geography or religion or ethnicity or anything like that, but are based on ideological reasons. So you're going to get things like that. If this is the world we're going to live in, then everything happens now, right where you are. I remember a time when we used to fear cameras on every street corner. Now we fear their absence. With COVID, Convoys, and Justin Trudeau. Well, there's this great, big, bad, old, mean pandemic where we're all afraid of COVID, don't know who's going to get it. Some people got rich, but many more got poor. Some people got angry when I showed Trudeau the door. So they gathered in their trucks and came from all across the land, headed down to Ottawa to stick it to the man. No more mandates or passports, too. But all Trudeau could hear was the evil Nazi crew who whispered sweet nothings about people and the vote. Hey there, Justin, you want to keep the libs afloat, so he stoked that fire in the hopes of getting warm. Maybe he didn't hear the coming of the storm, but the Emergencies Act came and the accounts all froze. People looked at neighbors who wore the wrong clothes. What little trust we had was thrown all away, but then just like that it's gone. Night turns back to day. What the hell was that? What was it that was done? Do we trust our handsome leader, Canada's royal son? Well, emergency is over now, so I guess it's all okay. May God watch over us and keep division at bay.